Hello African Gold Growers, how are you today? Welcome to a new video of African Gold Growers Academy. Today we are going to listen a TED Talk from our sister Laiqa Walli. In her talk, we are going to listen her perspective about what is actually developing Africa versus Westernizing Africa. If this is the first time you visit us, welcome to African Gold Growers Academy. In this channel, we are going to share with you powerful knowledge about how you can start strategic business in Africa with low risk, with low investment. Don't forget to subscribe, give us a like, tell us in the comment what other kind of content do you want to see here in this channel. Tell us if you like or if you don't like the video you are watching and tell us why. Don't forget to activate the bell notifications and enjoy the amazing TED Talk from our sister Laiqa Walli. I will see you at the end of the video to give you my own perspective comment from this TED Talk. Let's start.
So you've traveled abroad to a Western country, and somebody asks you, wow, you're from Africa, so how is it like living there? What do you respond to that? It might go something like, yeah, I'm from East Africa. It's kind of a different life, but we all speak English. We have a KFC. We got a Pizza Hut. So it's not that different. Think about that response. When we're trying to describe our country or our continent as a whole, we tend to focus on the qualities that is Western. We forget the fact that the world's most genetically diverse people are here. They belong to 3,000 tribes. They speak 2,000 languages. And we also forget to mention the fact that we have readily available fresh produce on our markets. We have unique methods of transport like matatus and tuk-tuks, which you don't get in many places. Our generation is making a grave mistake, and it's a mistake we must recognize because we're worsening the image of Africa. So why do we still seek validation from the West? We are the sole representation of Africa and its people in the 21st century. When I was growing up and it was time for me to learn my languages, my mom was certain that I had to know Gujarati, which is my native language. But the debates came to play when deciding between English and Kiswahili. You see, my mom went to a Kiswahili medium school, so she learned math, history, science, all in our national language. And as she pursued her passion for being an educator, her language didn't hinder her development. In fact, she graduated with a PhD recently, and she has maintained her love and fluency for the language. But our society ridiculed her. It seemed odd. They said I'd turn out to be uneducated. They said I would be socially disadvantaged. They said I wouldn't be ready for the world, but here I am. And it saddens me to know that in parts of East Africa, the culture of speaking this language is slowly but surely fading away. When you look at these two scenarios, you can easily tell that we somehow affiliate this Western culture with superiority. And nowadays, countries have started to think that Westernization and development are the same thing, which they are not. Africa needs to realize this. The red countries, which include Canada, the US, and most of Europe, are the Western world. And if you take a closer look, you can tell how little population and land they actually occupy, at least in comparison to the rest of the blue world. Yet, Africa, the magnanimous continent, and all of its 54 countries are so focused on mirroring that tiny fraction. That's a curse we must break through from, because this superiority is the root cause of our problem, whereby Westernization is hindering our African innovation. When we suppress the option of coming up with new and authentic ideas, we continue to be inferior. Until we start looking within rather than beyond, until we start coming up with our authentic ideas to solve our own problems. We must take authority of our progress. Forget coming up with innovations. What about the pre-existing knowledge systems? What about our traditions and cultures? The stuff that's already been discovered by our ancestors. We disregard it as if it's inadequate. And we've reached a time and place where we think they're inadequate, and that is sad, because they are so valid to our continent's development. When you take a look at a case study in the Niger Republic, where the World Bank swooped in to deal with the problem of food scarcity due to drought, they employed a project that costed over $100 million, and guess what? It failed miserably. And in the exact same African country, they were using a traditional method known as tassa, which is positively flourishing. This farming technique included digging dams and holes in order to collect the rainwater and naturally irrigate the crops. Simple. But why didn't the World Bank consider it? Why didn't they use it? Because Niger would have solved their problem a long time ago if they did. And if we gave the well-deserved credit to our African ideas, then maybe our continent would have been in a much better place. Perhaps Muammar Gaddafi was right. As controversial as it may have been, he was right in uniting the people of Africa to believe in themselves rather than pleading the world to believe in us. Because it's ironic that the same people we plead to believe in us are those who defined us in the first place. Our continent has been so heavily influenced by the West. Our countries were drawn on a map by the West when they discovered us. Think about it. They literally validated our existence. So it's no wonder that our leaders continue to idolize it and make our countries look more like the West. Ladies and gentlemen, I must re-emphasize that these two concepts are just not the same. There's an ongoing cultural imperialism. And as we let that imperialism go by, we're washing away the remains of our cultures and our traditions. Let's take a very common example. Most of us use forks and knives to eat our dinner today. Why didn't you use your hands? You might say it's unhygienic, unhealthy, ill-mannered. The list goes on, but you're wrong. Because your fingers, they contain natural bacteria, which is good for your gut, and it helps in digestion. But that's just too uncivilized nowadays. So just like my mom did, what are some of the choices you could make? Number one, being mindful, being conscious of your decisions. What you say, what you eat, what you wear, it makes a difference because you are an important piece of the big solution puzzle. Number two, redefine your terms. Westernization, development, they're subjective, I promise. They're subjective to your own lives. So you need to make a definition that is relevant to you. And this might sound kind of easy, but it's not. Because sometimes there's some Western solutions our continent might not be able to survive without. Things like the education systems. It's controversial, but maybe Africa would be worse off without the West. We need to, number three, contextualize the knowledge. We cannot adopt, we must adapt so that it fits into our context. We must not mirror these Western solutions because we live in a different context for a reason. It gets kind of hard, but I think it's worth it. And I really hope you think it's worth it too, because if we strive to make these changes, then maybe, just maybe, our continent would look like this. Westernization, mirroring Western ideals, development, making progress as a continent, mutually exclusive events. They're not the same at all. There are a lot of gray areas when you try to define the two terms and draw a line, but that's because there have never been any boundaries between the two terms in history. The problem we're dealing with is very colorful, so there will be no black and white solution to it. But that doesn't mean you sit back and go with the flow, because if you ignore this problem, then you are becoming an agent of modern colonization, and that is regretful. We must collectively make the efforts to put Africa on the map, this time for itself, not for the West to divide and conquer like it was ever theirs to take control of. Now, the continent is in your very hands. What you choose to do with that will define Africa's future.
Well, African gold growers, I hope you enjoyed the TED Talk from our sister Laiqa Walli. First, I want to tell you, if you want to watch the full video, the whole video, I will left you the link to the original video in the description and in the first comment. Second one, I want to give you my own perspective from this TED Talk, and it's something we have time saying here in African Gold Grower Academy. In other groups, you can listen from, for example, Mika from Swahili Nations, One Africa, or from other content creators like Paul Lumumba, for example, is very famous. Now, we need to understand that Africa is different. We need to accept, we need to feel proud of the diversity, of the cultural diversity we have in Africa. We need to understand that if something worked in the past in other regions, not necessarily need to work exactly in the same way here in Africa. Because in Africa, we have a different reality. It's true, many things will work in certain way, but we need to think in adapt instead of import areas. We need to, what we call in Latin America, tropicalizate something. Maybe, for example, certain kind of educational system can work, certain kind of health system can work, certain kind of economical theory of development can work, but not exactly the same process will work in every country. And this is important we understand. Something that the Western world don't want to accept is their areas are not valid in the same way for everyone. Every country have different culture, have different reality, have different needs. We need to listen it. We need to adapt certain areas, okay, to implement it. We need to taste, maybe worse, maybe don't worse, maybe is not good for the development of the culture of a certain region. I will tell you an example. A lot of people in the past thought that we need to consume more calories in Mexico to eradicate famine and to eradicate hunger here in Mexico and in the majority of the countries of Latin America. So Western countries, specifically the Rockefeller Association, the Rockefeller Foundation and the United States government make a lot of progress and a lot of research here in Mexico in the Green Revolution in the 30 years, you know, from the 20th century, from 1925 to 1947 around. In this process, they create a new kind of corn with more calories. They bring new varieties of wheat, okay, and they implement high calories diets with these new varieties of wheat and with these new varieties of corn in Mexico. They tasted with us. What they didn't understand is our cultures. Corn is from Mexico. We genetically are adapted to eat corn, but different kind of corns. We have more than 100 varieties, traditional varieties of corn in all the country. Now in these times, we only have less than 50 varieties, original varieties of corn. We have varieties from arid zones, from tropical zones, from forests, from rainforests, from mountains, etc., etc. Blue corns, pink corns, red corns, yellow corns, white corns. We have a huge variety of corns adapted to our diet. Now, when they implemented this high caloric diet with a lot of wheat and with these new varieties of yellow and white corn, we start having diabetes. Because they thought that everyone need to adapt to this high caloric diet, and this is not true. We need to understand how to eat. We need to understand how to adapt certain technologies. For example, how to fertilize the soil, how we can take the organic matter and to fertilize our soil. As she said in the video, how we can take the ancient technologies from our cultures and adapt in situ for the new needs. Science is not bad, but we need to understand science is not God. We need to adapt from our traditional knowledge, from our traditional cultures, in fusion with science. Are not separate, and we need both for survive. At the end, cultural knowledge, ancient knowledge, is a kind of science. It's a kind of science because it's the evolution of humanity. We need to respect. We need to understand that it's not bad to have, for example, soil roads in the streets. It's not bad to live in small villages. If we have internet connection, we can have a nice lifestyle. We can have access to education. We can have access to health services. If we have if we have electricity, if we have access to cars, if we have access to internet, okay, we can create the solutions we need, but we don't need to live in a big city like New York or Los Angeles or London or Madrid. We need to adapt to reality. The same for agriculture, the same for science, the same for the educational system, the same for entrepreneurs in Africa. I always told you in African Gold Growers Academy that entrepreneurs is the only way we have to survive to the new colonization, to survive to the new era in the world inside of Africa. Is the only way we have to make Africa survive as independent continent and bring all the solutions we need in our societies to don't crash it again, to don't fail, to don't have famine, to don't have scarcity of everything, food, energy, etc., etc. Entrepreneurship is the only way. We need to learn from other entrepreneurs around the world, but we don't have to think like them. We cannot copy their mindset. Like, for example, we cannot want to be the new Bill Gates, the new Elon Musk, inside of Africa, because they are big entrepreneurs, but they are also from the Western world. They have different perspective. They understand the world in a very different way that in our cultures. Okay? Think in how African entrepreneurs becomes who they are. Admire the people who was bringing real solutions for the people. That's what I invite you. We cannot westernize Africa. We cannot think the Western area of development is the only way we have. Sustainability, we can create new ways to live. We can have, I will give you a small example. Everyone told me, Haile, but if we don't copy the Western way, how do you think we can survive? For example, about the fuels. I will tell you an example, my personal perspective. What if every house have a biodigester to produce biogas, a solar heater to produce warm water? What if every house in Africa have rain captation to have their own water? What if every house in Africa produce at least 30% of the food they consume in small spaces with the technology? What if? Just imagine how different will be Africa. Because all the resources we have in the soil, we can export. But at the same time, we are sustainable people. We don't will have the problems that Germany, that France, that United Kingdom have in this moment. They have a scarcity of gas. They want the gas, they want the oil from Africa because they don't have. because they don't have a sustainable way of living. What if we create a new way of development? What if we think different, out of the box, and we create the Africa we really want, we really deserve? Think on that. Think on that and tell me in the comments, what if? Is anything impossible for an African? Now, no matter the religion you follow, I invite you to have very strong connection with your spirituality. No matter if you are Protestant, Catholic, Orthodox, Muslim, spiritualist, no matter the religion. Our ancestors in Africa teach us to have big connection with God. Teach us to have big connection with our spirituality. Don't forget that, because only that connection is what will guide you inside of this world, inside of this chaotic era that Western world tried to implement a lot of confusion inside of our people and our societies. Okay? If you have a strong spiritual, if you have a strong spirit, if you have enough connection with your spirituality, with your God, you will understand what is good, what is not good, what is the right things you have to do. You will not feel overwhelmed by the money and things that actually are not matter. You can focus directly on what is important. Love, family, different ways to survive, different ways to have health, different way to have money, different way of work, different way to bring wellness to your society, to your family. To have food, to have energy, whatever you need. Your creativity will come from your strong connection with your spirituality. And this is something we cannot forget. And this is something we need to have clear, that this is an African cultural heritage. Western world forgot it. They only worship money, worship science as the only true, but it's not. World is so much more complex. And you need to understand that Africa is different, Africa is proud. We are sons of Africa. So that's all for today, African Gold Growers. I hope you liked the video. Remember, I will give you the link of the full TED Talk in the description or in the comments, in the first comment. Tell me in the comments what do you think about this video, about the TED Talk, what other kind do you want to see in this channel. Don't forget to subscribe, give us a like, and see you in the next video, African Gold Growers. And remember, we grow gold in Africa. Bye-bye.